something that's absolutely terrible, and that is microplastics. With me today is a new friend. We've got Professor Sherri Sam Mason, Ph.D. She's over there. Where are you exactly?
Erie, Pennsylvania, in the United States.
Is it very eerie there?
At times, we have some pretty long winters, but I'm looking out the window right now. It's absolutely gorgeous. So,
Well,
I know
Halloween season's among us. Are you a big Halloween fan?
I am a huge Halloween
Oh,
fan.
really?
Yeah.
How did I know? Uh, well, speaking of scary stuff, microplastics, you seem to know a lot about them. What brought you on your academic journey to want to find out more about microplastics?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Um, so I'm kind of from a very early age, like the age of like 10, became really interested in kind of environmental issues, and so that really followed me throughout my life. And as I got my PhD, I was studying atmospheric chemistry. And that's what I did for the first 10 years of my academic career. But I would always kind of keep my finger in, kind of looking and listening and watching and reading about various environmental issues. So when I graduated with my PhD, I'd heard about the quote unquote discovery of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch,
Hmm.
and would teach about plastic pollution to my general education chemistry classes, right? These are classes that are not chemistry students, they're not chemistry majors, they're like majoring in business or like music. And I have to somehow get them to care about chemistry. Um, so you can imagine the uphill challenge. So I thought, okay, I could use plastic as kind of like this mechanism because it's something we all use and it's just surrounds us, right? And so I could use it to talk about chemistry. And then by the end of the semester, we're also talking about kind of the negatives that are associated with this wondrous material, and how we're finding it in these vast quantities in the world's oceans. So I had taught about it for quite a few years. As I lived on what we refer to in the United States as the Great Lakes. These are the Laurentian Great Lakes. They are the largest freshwater ecosystem in the entire planet, holding 20% of the world's fresh water. And I moved here back in 2001. So I lived along the shores of the Great Lakes, this freshwater system, teaching about plastic pollution in the world's oceans when I went sailing for the first time and was like, I never thought about plastic pollution in freshwater. I wonder if there's plastic in like the Great Lakes. And, that's how good science always starts, right? Is with like a question, just like a simple question. And so I went back to my lab and I did a literature review and there was nothing. There was nothing out there. And so that's kind of my claim to fame is that my research lab was the first to look within the largest freshwater ecosystem in the planet for plastic pollution. I kind of did it just for fun as like a side project. Um, Threw the first net into the water, brought it in, and I was just hooked. I was like, yes, this is now what I want to do. I'm giving up my whole career as an atmospheric chemist, and I just want to study. I just had like all of these questions come bubbling into my mind, and it just became an obsession for me. And so I really kind of did this, 90-degree turn in my career and just decided to change what I studied.
It's a little bit frightening to think that, you've stumbled onto something that nobody has thought about, which is almost in a way painfully obvious because doesn't the Great Lakes have a history of like industrial runoff and pollution and horrible stuff like that? Isn't that true?
Yeah, have you read The Lorax by Dr. Seuss?
Oh, was that based there? Oh,
the
I drove to Buffalo one time. I think I saw the Lorax. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm only like 90 miles away from Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. And what the original version of the Lorax has a paragraph in it where he's talking about the lake being so gummy, it's almost as bad as Lake Erie. Okay, that didn't rhyme, so obviously I'm
It's
not
something like
doing it
that.
right. yeah, but he says, oh, it's so dreary. Things are almost as bad as in Lake Erie.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
Closer that second time
Wow.
around.
So, and
So yeah.
this was written 40, 50 years ago.
Oh my goodness. It was in 1976
Really?
that
Okay.
book came
You're a
out.
big Dr.
Yeah.
Seuss fan here. Okay. All right. All right.
I have a special like place in my heart for the Lorax specifically,
The
which he
Lorax,
speaks for
and
the tree.
did you ever read The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein?
Oh, yeah, of course. You can't, are there people that go through childhood without reading? They should not be people that go through childhood without reading the
Yeah.
Giving Tree.
Some people read it, and at the end, the moral, they go, it's too bad the tree didn't have anything else to give. Like, he should just go find another tree and chop that down.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that is the bifurcation between the good and the bad humans,
Yeah.
We're always talking about overpopulation and like, well, how do you decide who would live and die and who gets to have that right? Maybe that should be the bifurcation. Okay.
Yeah.
I just took us off in a very weird direction.
No, but I absolutely agree. We're one of the very few people that say, look, it's really obvious that people are to blame for a lot of it's their own problems. And every evolutionary biologist would tell you that we've overshot our species. And you're a scientist. You see the same thing, do you not?
I do. And in order to have to wake up every day, you have to have hope, and you have to believe that innately humans are good. But then you go about your day and you're kind of hit time and time again. It's like a 1-2 punch, as you go through your day, and
Yeah.
With the fact that maybe not all humans are good.
Yeah. So
let me just hope that there's more of us than them, more of the good people than the bad people.
And I had to tell my wife this week, and I said, I guarantee there must be, because I only think that it's a handful of people who truly, you've got the sociopathic people on top who are controlling everything and making everything terrible. But then you have some, psychotic country bumpkin types that really just don't want to be educated in any other way and are sheepish in a lot of ways. And, not so great either. But everybody else is doing all right. If you put the right thing in front of them, I think they'll do the right thing. I really want to believe that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I do honestly think that is true. So you have to, you have to kind of, otherwise it's hard to get up in the day, right? So you have to kind of, but I do believe that is true. I think that we are more good than bad. And I just think that we don't know as much as we think we do. And that, I think as a species, we tend to overestimate our knowledge base. So a little bit more humility would go a long way.
That's a really nice way of saying super arrogant, kind of.
I do what I can.
I think, yeah, you're right. Ignorance and arrogance. It's the deadly combo.
Yeah. It is. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I know everything.
Back to microplastics.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to ask you, especially with evil people at the top of the thing. Have you noticed polymer kind of science shills coming into your industry, trying to hinder microplastic research? Can it all be tied back to industry in some way? Because we're always looking for make a connection to big business and plastic bags.
There's a lot of connections to be made. I'll start with this. My where I was going, the segue I was going on was the arrogance, right? And that piece, the fact, we created this material, and at the time, like it was considered this like wonder material, right? It doesn't break. It's really lightweight, and you can mold it into all number of things. And we just didn't kind of have the realization of what that would mean in terms of the environment, right? So all of these same properties that make it really attractive as a material on the like material science side are exactly the same properties that are an issue when it comes to the environment. It's lightweight, so it gets carried everywhere. It doesn't degrade, so it just breaks into smaller pieces as it's being carried throughout the planet, right? It doesn't biodegrade. On the corporate side of things, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to be said there. I mean, I think I'll start with this, which is, as you know, fossil fuels have traditionally been used for, transportation, and transportation is becoming more electrified. So fossil fuel companies are just going to throw up their hands and say, okay, well, we had a good run. No, of course not. They are very explicit about the fact that Plan B is plastics. And so there's this huge kind of shift and build out happening and moving from fossil fuels as transportation to fossil fuels to make more and more plastics. So even as we hear more and more news reports about how plastic is all over the planet, doesn't matter where you look, right? I mean, just earlier this week, they were talking about plastic being found in clouds, right? Japanese researchers found plastic within clouds. We found it at the top of every mountain we've looked at. We found it at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. It's in our blood. It's in our lungs. It's in the placental boundary on both the maternal and the fetal side, right? I mean, you cannot, there's just no like bottom to to this. So even as all of this is coming out and we're understanding more and more about like the human health impacts of this plastic, for example, as being connected to Alzheimer's and other neurological
Oh,
disorders.
Jesus.
So
And
even as all
it
this
started the Great Chicago Fire, and it also,
Absolutely.
Jesus.
Yeah. So even as we're hearing all of this news that could make maybe people go, maybe we should rethink our usage of this material and work to use less of it. I'm not talking about like we're going to go cold turkey tomorrow and not use it at all, but just use less of it. Instead, kind of the fossil fuel industry is like, no, we want to increase, we want to ramp up production.
Yeah.
And that's their plan. And to be honest, living in Pennsylvania, I'm kind of in the heart of it here.
Yeah.
Do we want to go down that rabbit hole?
Well, can you compare it to Montana in some way as far as to that kind of...
Oh, yeah. I mean, Montana has a lot of legacy kind of pollution from a lot of mining.
Okay.
And we have that too, largely associated with coal, but the build out that's happening here, in Pennsylvania, we do a lot of hydrofracking.
Oh, great. Super.
Which I think a lot of people associate that with natural gas, but more and more that is being used to actually make plastics. So just down the road from me outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, they've built this, I forget how many $1 billion they spent on this facility that's going to take that hydrofracked gas and turn it into polyethylene. And then there's a whole pipeline that spans from 350 miles from Ohio all across the great state of Pennsylvania to ship more of that hydrofracked gas, ship it across the state to a port outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to be put onto cargo ships that then will take it largely to Scotland to be turned into plastic.
What the fuck?
So don't worry, our tentacles are spreading out throughout the world. Don't think you're safe over there in Europe. You are not.
Dude, it sounds like exactly like the how we get our food too. It's like we grow the apples here, and then we ship them to Brazil, and they skin them, and then they send them to China, and then they chop them, and then they send them back, and then we unpackage them from plastic and eat them. God almighty. Yeah. When does it end? Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
that's frightening.
Yeah.
I mean, but you also know a lot about, health effects, right? I mean, I've read a lot about it. Tell me some of in drinking water, you drink some microplastics. What are we talking here? Potential risks.
Okay, well, when we're talking about health effects of plastics, we kind of have to divide it into two camps. One is what is the impact of the plastic itself, the polymer. And then the second camp is what about the chemicals that are used in the production of plastics?
Mm.
So let's start with the plastic itself, because that's a simpler story, which is we know very little. So
Damn it.
that's kind of the front end of where a lot of the science is trying to understand what is the impact of the plastic itself. And that's where the newest kind of information is coming out. It was just last November that there was a whole journal from one of the medical associations, and it was completely focused on the connection between plastics and these neurological disorders. um, and so the kind of emerging research seems to be at least making connections between plastics and Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other neurological disorders. But that's very much at the front end. So there's still a lot of research to be done on that. What we know more about is the other piece, which is the chemical side. So it's important as a preface to this to understand that plastic as a material is not one thing. It's literally thousands of different things. Plastic is, in fact, a mixture. So you have the polymer, and there's thousands of different polymers, but then there's also 10,000 different chemicals that are used when we manufacture plastic items. So you have UV stabilizers so that the plastic doesn't become really brittle very quickly.
Okay.
You have plasticizers to make it moldable. You have colorants so that you can have, pink and blue and purple, plastic, whatever, frisbees. You have flame retardants,
Oh, yeah.
because if you think about the fact, right, that plastic is ultimately based on fossil fuels, and fossil fuels are very combustible, i.e., we use them for transportation, then plastic in and of itself is very combustible. And so we add flame retardants so that they're less combustible into the actual packaging, right? In addition to, like I said, thousands of other different chemicals. So when you're holding like a plastic bottle in your hand, it's a mixture of all these different chemicals, and those chemicals that are added during the manufacturing process are not chemically bound to the plastic. So they migrate very easily out of those plastic objects. So a bottle of water, as it's being transported, they're not transported cold, they're transported at whatever room temperature is. And these are usually, semi trucks in the sun, and it's hot. And heat causes molecules to move faster. So a lot of those chemicals that are in the plastic will readily migrate into the water, and then you're drinking the water. So there is plastic in that water too. That was a separate study where we actually showed that the plastic bottle sheds plastic, but in addition to that, it sheds those chemicals. So you're both getting the plastic and the chemicals anytime you drink bottled water. Those chemicals, we know, so of those 10,000 different chemicals, we know that 3,000 of them have human health impacts, which is not to say that the other 7,000 are safe. We just don't know. We don't have data on them. So we have data on 3,000 that we know have human health impacts. And most notably, kind of the biggest kind of grouping of them are chemicals that we refer to as endocrine disruptors. That means that they mimic, you've talked about endocrine disruptors before?
Oh, I've heard about it. In fact, I've heard about the testing in birds where they ate it, and then they couldn't they couldn't develop, right? The birds couldn't develop.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, so endocrine disruptors mimic hormones, and hormones are the chemical messengers of the body. So if you think about your body, right, you have this brain that's at the top, and it has to tell all of your entire body, from your fingers to your toes to your organs, what to do. And how does that information get transmitted? Like if I want to wiggle my toes, a message is being sent from my toes to my brain, and my brain is sending the message back to my toes to do that wiggling, right? And all of that is happening through hormones. All of that messaging. Hormones tell us when we're hungry, when we're tired, when we're stressed. They talk to us about sex, right? I mean, so I think a lot of people think of hormones on that kind of sexual side, but they do way more than that. So when you start messing with those hormones, it's like the game of telephone that many of us played at summer camp, right? Where like somebody says at the beginning, right, you're passing this message from person to person, and somebody starts off saying, I really hate broccoli. And by the end of it, you're like, Monsanto is a giant corporation who is, affecting the ability of humans to survive on our planet. Whatever, right?
Oh, yeah.
The point is that the messaging gets kind of messed up in between the starting point and the ending point.
Yeah.
And that's basically what endocrine disruptors do, is they mess up that messaging. And so it can have a whole suite of human health impacts, from the fact that, sperm counts are decreasing, to certain types of cancer, ovarian cancer and breast cancer in women, prostate cancer in men, increases in autism and ADHD, even increases in obesity rates, right? Because of a reprogramming of our DNA. And there's some great books out on this. My favorite and kind of the most recent one is a book by Dr. Shauna Swan called Countdown. If you look at Countdown, you have to put in Dr. Shauna Swan with it because it's a very popular book title name. But if you use all of those, you can find it. But it's like the subtext, or the, countdown, and then colon, the next description of it is like how, endocrine disruptors are affecting the ability of the human race to survive, something like that.
Sure.
And all about these endocrine disrupting chemicals. And chapter 7 of that book is on plastics.
Okay. I'll check it out. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back to the fire retardants. Now, what typically, these are carcinogenic, no, are they not?
Yes. Yeah. So that's a whole other, yes. So yes, PFAS chemicals are also known to be carcinogens. And that's a whole other thing. Like I talked about the chemicals that are used to manufacture plastic, but when plastic is out in the environment, so like as plastic is out in the Great Lakes that I live in, when we pull those plastics in, they don't just have the chemicals that were used in the plastics, they've actually absorbed chemicals from the external environment. So you mentioned that the Great Lakes have this legacy contamination. They absolutely do, right? There are dioxins and polyaromatic hydrocarbons and polychlorinated biphenyls. These are industrial chemicals. Some are produced in the burning of coal. Some of them were used, PCBs, for example, were used as industrial insulators. They were banned because of their known human health impact, but because they don't readily biodegrade, they're still out in the Great Lakes. So they were banned in like the 1970s, but we still find them in fairly high concentrations in the Great Lakes. Mercury is another one of these chemicals, right? So we find these chemicals that get basically, they stick to the outside of the plastic. And so when that plastic makes its way into my net, or more unfortunately, a fish or a frog or a phytoplankton or an algae, right? When it gets absorbed into these living organisms, those chemicals come with it. So it's not just the chemicals that are used in the plastic manufacturing, but the chemicals that are stick to the outside. And many of those chemicals are known to be carcinogens and neurotoxins, and a lot of these categories of classifications of chemicals that make them very concerning.
So isn't it safe to say that there's something horribly wrong with the way that chemical companies make advancements, because it doesn't seem like they put much foresight into how those chemicals will react with other things in the world, right? Like everything from pesticides to plastics to pharmaceuticals. I don't think any of it's well thought out. Is that safe to say?
Uh, you're speaking my language.
Oh,
You know,
honey, I
I'm
knew
a
I'd like you.
chemist. I'm a chemist who's constantly out there warning people about chemicals. Like, and here's the thing. This is the thing that nobody talks about, and it disturbs me. I went through 10 years of training, right? I got an undergrad and I got my PhD, 10 years of schooling. Was I ever, all as a chemist, right? All of my undergrad, bachelor's degree, went on, got my PhD, all of that in the field of chemistry. Was I ever once required to take an ecotoxicology class? No,
Wow.
no. There is no requirement in the chemistry curriculum that students have to be educated in toxicology.
Jesus Christ.
We're teaching students how to make chemicals, but never talking to them about what are the ramifications of that action. And in the United States, synthetic chemicals are allowed to be released onto the market without human health impact testing, with the exception of pharmaceuticals, right? Pharmaceuticals, those go through testing, but pesticides, fertilizers, chemical PFAS, right? Triclosan. I mean, there's like, I think I looked this up just recently for my class. There's 168,000 chemicals on the market right now. And like very few, a small percentage of them have actually been tested for human health impacts. Mm. And in the United States, and that's because it's not required. In the United States, chemicals are considered innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And I totally support that when it comes to humans. I have real issues, though, when we're applying that to chemicals, right? In Europe, you guys actually are much more under, at least the UK, I'm not sure about Germany, but in Europe, largely, you're under a different kind of approach to chemicals, which is the precautionary principle. That basically you have to prove a chemical is safe before you can put it on the marketplace, which is why there's a lot of chemicals that are not allowed in Europe that are used willy-nilly in the United States. The problem with this being that chemicals don't like, oh, I'm supposed to stay in the United States? Do I need a visa to come into Europe? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Viruses
they don't
too.
Do that, right? They just move through the air, through the water. They hopscotch the globe, right? I mentioned, the Great Lakes have a lot of these like legacy chemicals. Well, actually, in the summertime, when it gets hot, they get released into the air and they move downwind. And then in the colder climates, they'll settle, right? And they'll go back into water systems and settle on soil and on plants. Right. And so this is how chemicals move. They hopscotch the globe. And the reality is that a lot of these chemicals are very long lived. So they're persistent and they're bioaccumulative and they're toxic. And it's an issue.
Yeah, it always seems like it has been an issue. And this is, we move forward and where they say, we've got this new thing and it's going to be great. Everybody just hold on to your shorts. It's going to cure everything that ails you. And then it's like 30 years later, they're like, and another sweeping, litigation where somebody gets settled billions of dollars out of court because they were like, whoops. But then they keep going. They keep figuring out new ways. And I think that the overhead too is relatively small. Pharmaceutical companies, especially, they put more money into marketing than research a lot of the time. And I say just
Yeah.
mix some chemicals together and see what happens.
Yeah. It's a real issue. I mean, it's something that we need more collective action on. I do think that there's starting to become that realization, at least with regard to plastics, and hopefully if it starts there, it'll move to other things. But the United Nations is working on a plastics treaty right now. So they've had their first of 5 meetings. They just released their first iteration of a report, which they called it like version 0, which I thought was kind of funny. Like, shouldn't it be version 1? But silly Europeans and how you count.
Yeah. We start from 0, huh?
Yeah. And what's the connection to the plastics treaty, aside from the fact that we're ostensibly talking about microplastics, that we've talked about a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
But the connection here is that when they had that first meeting, there was kind of this 2 camps that developed, and the United States was in the camp that plastics should only be regulated from the standpoint of that they become pollution at the end of their life. Whereas a lot of the other countries were in this camp of no, plastics pollute from the moment they're extracted out of the ground. They are, after all, fossil fuel based. There's lots of chemicals that are used in them, so they're very toxic. And so you really have to look at and regulate plastics throughout its life cycle. This isn't just an end of life problem, it's a full circle problem. And so the kind of that recognition of the chemical inputs and the impacts that those synthetic chemicals have in addition to the plastics itself. And this first version that came out took more that approach. And so it kind of gives me hope, not only on the plastic pollution side, but on kind of this kind of global awareness about synthetic chemicals and our usage of them so willy-nilly.
Right. Willy-nilly. Good way to describe the way the chemicals are distributed through the world. Willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly. I mean,
this is how you know I'm an American.
Yeah. I bring that to Germany. They what do you mean willy-nilly? What is that? So, you're also, as in addition to being plastic expert and wonderful human being, you're like a good citizen of Earth, and you're living and breathing. You're looking around. You're seeing how we live. What are some of the most common things that are plastic that can we just get rid of just forever, just right away?
Easy. I mean, for me, it becomes a game, right? So I just go one thing after another. So, I mean, I think the starting point for me, and probably for a lot of at least Americans, was plastic bags, bringing your reusable bags, although I think reusable bags are so much more part of the European culture than they were here. And then bottled water. I mean, if you're looking to reduce like the prevalence of plastic in your own body, the starting point is bottled water. You just don't drink beverages that are packaged in plastic, whether that's water or soda or juice or anything. Try and shy away from that. And then, plastic toothbrushes, laundry, I try and not purchase things that are packaged in plastic. So like my laundry detergent, peanut butter. If there is a glass or a metal alternative,
just put it in my hands. I'll take the peanut butter, and
if it's peanut butter, absolutely, because it won't make it very far.
Put it in my front pocket, and I'll be on my way.
Toothpaste, right? I get toothpaste tablets.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Cool.
I love toothpaste tablets. I find them much more convenient when I travel as well.
Yeah.
As
I'll look into that.
tubes.
I like that.
Shampoo, conditioner, using bar soap instead of, body washes, hand soaps. packaging, I mean, that's the biggest use of plastic worldwide is packaging. And
Mm.
so just start looking around at the things that you buy and see if there are alternatives. Um, there's another thing the to-go packaging. I don't know what it's like in Europe, but if you order food to go here, it's usually styrofoam still,
Still, yeah,
which,
yeah, yeah.
which is just like I thought aren't we past 1980?
That was a joke. That was like a joke in the 80s that those styrofoam doesn't biodegrade and we're going to get rid of it, but we never really did we?
No, it's
Did
still
you
there.
did you hear about the big 1987 balloon accident? In
What?
1987, this is totally like off course, but in 1987, the United Way, a charity organization, had this big event where they wanted to set off like 1 million balloons, and they got like a bunch of people to give $1 per balloon and everything. It was a whole thing. Oh, I can't believe you don't know this. I can't believe you don't know this. Look
Oh
this
my
up
God.
after this. They set these balloons free. Well, a lot of the participants thought that the balloons would just disintegrate when it got to a certain level of atmosphere. People have no idea what happens to the shit. And it floats down river. Of course, a rainstorm comes, so they all get blown into the sewer and horses get spooked and it's just a nightmare. And they ended up losing money because so many people sued them. But it's a good one. It's a
Yeah.
good humans are stupid story if you're into this kind of thing.
And balloons are plastic. And
Yeah.
so yeah, balloon releases, don't do a balloon release. I get brokenhearted every time. I mean, I understand people want to commemorate their loved ones, but these like balloon releases, the like, I'm going to somehow send this message to heaven. No, it doesn't go to heaven. The balloons don't make it to heaven, sweetie. They just come down and they choke a bird.
Yeah, they're going to
Yeah.
send some
So you
bird to
just killed
heaven.
somebody else's. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say you just killed somebody else's daughter. Great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, you know,
yeah. I see it too.
not that people think of it that way, but
Yeah, but I still,
most.
I see it, and I just think you just for why, for what reason? Fireworks too, because they scare most dogs, animals, wildlife, and I think it's a cheap thrill. It's really a cheap thrill. You could get the same thing in a laser light show or whatever. Take drugs for crying out loud. You'll have a better time. Try whiskey. Whiskey's wonderful. Oh.
The Chris Jeffries podcast where they tell you to take drugs.
Well, I can neither condone neither, but no.
Nor.
Can I? I don't think I can. No. As long as you can get your hands on some legal weed and it's some legal whiskey, then
There
do
you
that
go.
and you'll
Yeah.
be all right. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Fine.
Well, let's talk. We'll wrap it up. You come back and do this again, right? You had fun?
I did have fun.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
God. Because not every podcast is fun. Some of them are horrible, as you know. Not naming any names.
You're letting the audience in on a secret that happened before recording. But that's
I know.
okay.
That's cool. That's a callback.
Yeah.
That builds intrigue. It shows that we're cool. We're friends. We got inside
We are.
jokes. Nobody knows. Dr. Sherri Sam Mason, Director of Sustainability, Penn State, Erie, Pennsylvania. Wonderful human being. Oh my goodness. Anything you want to add before we go?
I'll just say this. My favorite motto in life, be the change you wish to see in the world. So I encourage people to do that. Be the change.
Yeah. And be nice to people, be nice to wildlife, be nice to animals. Go vegan if you can, people. It's not that hard. Eat chickpeas, eat beans. Stop eating animals. See you guys.
Absolutely.